Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am Angela, and I am thrilled to have with me today Andy Campbell. And Andy is a resilient survivor and inspirational author who has overcome numerous life altering challenges. A victim of childhood sexual abuse and bullying, the loss of his mother at an early age, and the eventual estrangement from his father. His battle with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the loss of his youngest son to suicide. Despite enduring multiple surgeries, grueling chemotherapy treatments, and the tragic loss of his youngest child, Andy has demonstrated remarkable strength and perseverance. Through his experiences, he has developed a unique perspective on resilience and the power of his 15 core beliefs. Andy lives with his wife and remains actively engaged in the lives of his 3 remaining adult children as he continues to support his family while managing his own health challenges. His book, Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks, shares the principles that have helped him navigate life's darkest moments, offering hope and guidance to others facing adversity undefined. Wow. Welcome to the podcast, Andy. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Angela. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
Yeah, and I think reading your bio and what you've been through, you're going to have a whole pile of wisdom to share with the listeners today. We can start anywhere, but I'm thinking maybe just give us a little bit of background into what made you decide to start telling your story.
I think at some point I had to take a leave of absence. I think just everything had finally rolled up on me last year, especially the cancer treatments, and then dealing with my son's passing and everything that means for every family member because it affects everyone. His mother, his 3 siblings, me, people that he knew. And I just got to the point where I was just physically exhausted I worked through the cancer treatments. I'd worked, and I'm still in cancer treatments today. But I'm almost 7 years out from diagnosis, which I'm
Wow,
very thankful to still be here after a stage 4 diagnosis with pancreatic cancer.
that's incredible.
It is, and I'm very thankful to the physicians as well as, in particular, my general physician, my family practitioner, who is very much a believer in integrative medicine. Really brought together a lot of things that certainly I believe saved my life. But as I got through that, I just finally got physically exhausted. And my family physician, my wife, a couple of people had said somewhere along the way, you should write a book. Like you've done it, write about your cancer treatment, write about all. So when I took this leave of absence, the first 30 days, maybe the first 20 days, I thought, man, this is just going to be boring. I should just be back at work. I'm just like, what am I? But then your mind slows down. And then for about 30 days, I realized I was just exhausted. And I just went to sleep. And I don't know. I felt like Rip Van Winkle. I just woke up like 30 days later, and like all the, like just there's a whole story behind the cancer treatments and the chemotherapy and the immunotherapies and just multiple surgeries in between. But I've gotten through things by just putting my head down and staying focused on what's in front of me and just doing my best to put one foot in front of the other, right? And I will say my son's passing almost broke me.
Mm.
Or probably on a day-to-day basis, it did break me, but then you try to find a way to put yourself back together and come out of it, right? But I was there and I had a little time. And so I'd collected these 15 core beliefs over time. Like it was just, I don't know, it's just one of those things. I'm a visual thinker. I see in pictures, not words. When I think about things, it's always in a picture. And so I just started writing things down in words that described what I was thinking, and I like cliches because cliches are like meta statements. Like underneath a cliche, there's all this stuff that kind of gets
Mhm.
encapsulated up to a short phrase. I just started jotting them down, and it started out with 5, and then 5 turned into 10, and 10 along the way. I got to 15. I was like, everything has to fall under 15. I'm not creating any more than 15. And so when I started writing, so like I was bored and I started writing, but I didn't want to just write down. I didn't want to relive being sexually abused and raped as a child. Like that doesn't like I don't want to write that. And I don't want to write about cancer treatments. And I don't. Then I thought, well, maybe what would be useful instead of reliving the things, because you've been through EMDR, you've done all this therapy, maybe what would be important is to use some of those things as examples of why these core beliefs, how they came to be formulated. Like, why did you rely on them? So that's what I did. I ended up putting, and I'm not a really good author, as the editor would say when she sent me an updated invoice and said, "I've read your manuscript. It's gonna cost you a little more." Um, but she helped me, like that's never a good sign, when they're like, "Yeah, this is what it cost," and then they read it and they're like, we need to chat about that quote we gave you. But that's how it kind of came about. So then I had it. And it's kind of like in for a penny, in for a pound. You end up like putting it on Amazon. And part of it was just a process. I just thought that Amazon could, like, you can just do this and like put it on Amazon and then somebody can order one book and they'll just print it and send it to them. I just thought that was just from a process standpoint, that's just fascinating to me that they can actually make that happen. And then I had it and I thought, what am I going to do with it? And so I would talk to some people, not like big groups or things, but I would talk to people about it. And then actually I was scrolling something on the internet one day and this thing popped up and said, and I think like the thing was, why don't you tell your story on a podcast? And it wasn't like directed at me, it was like an ad. And like the ad was like, why don't you tell your story? And I thought, well, that's kind of like the universe giving me a little nudge. I've been looking for what I would do to it with it. And so that's how I decided to go out and talk to people because it felt like as I was working through the book and then in that period in between, I kept thinking, you don't want to be arrogant, like just tell people something. But then I thought, but there might be people who are really struggling. You were struggling. Maybe there's people who are struggling with these things and they're not sure what to do next. And they might be on the verge of giving up or getting stuck or just, like I said, just being hopeless. So if you're going to go through all that stuff, the least you could do is share that it's not hopeless. You can make it through. Time won't heal all wounds. But if you live long enough, if you give it a little bit of time, the hole that's left in your life by losing someone, a child in our case, that hole does, I don't think that hole ever gets smaller. Like so the objective is, I heard somebody say this, and I took it on as like the objective is to make your experiences larger so that the whole, while it stays the same, becomes a smaller percentage of your life. And so that became the objective. Just tell your story, but in a way that is intended to say to people wherever you are important, do not quit, do not give up, and give the universe a chance for you to find some peace and eventually find some happiness. Because you can, if you will persist and if you refuse to stay down, it will bring you to a low point. But you can choose to not stay there. And so that's the whole point, just to encourage people to say, look, if I am not special in that sense. We can all do this. Sometimes we just got to help each other do it.
And what did you find really helped you when you were in that dark place?
I believe that we all pass along generationally something of ourselves, not just genetically along the way, but also just like our determination, our perseverance, like our characteristics get passed along. And I saw in my mother, and certainly people before that, I have 6 words tattooed, 3 on each arm. And I don't know when I came up with this. As you can tell, I like to put things in like categories and I like to write them down so I can remember.
Mm.
And those 6 words, I tried to think one day, wow, my life kind of sucks. I mean, I had a house, I had a roof over my head, I had food to eat. I had parents who loved me, even if I didn't agree with the pursuits that they had. They loved me, and so I had these things, but it felt like life had been a bit of a challenge.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, but how did my ancestors make it? I mean, they didn't have toilet paper. They didn't have toilets to have toilet paper. Women didn't have sanitary pads. I mean, like little things, like you just go along, you're like, how the hell did people survive? When COVID hit, like there was a run on toilet paper and everybody thought
Yeah.
like, oh my God, we're gonna,
Yeah.
and I'm like thinking they didn't have anything and somehow they survived. Like, so what is it they would have left me? Like, yeah, we live in a different time. Yes, we live in a different age. We live in a way that maybe some of the things they live without are very difficult to live without today, but they still had principles. So I came up with these 6 words, and the words were honor, courage, determination, perseverance, wisdom, and success. And the way I thought it was, if you start out with an honorable intention, and it is honorable, sometimes when you're in the middle of that grieving process, when you're in those stages and you're going back and forth and you just don't know, it is honorable just to get out of bed. That's an honorable thing to do. Just get out of bed, because some days you can't do that and you don't want to do that. It may have been a few days since you had a shower. It's honorable to get up and wash when you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought honor, if you start with integrity, an honorable intent, then that will give you courage when things go badly. In my case, we did all we could to convince my son that he was valuable and that he should stay. So when times were difficult in that journey, it gave us courage. And courage over and over again gives you determination. And determination over and over again is, I think, what people call perseverance. You've been determined over and over. People say you persist. And if you persevere long enough, you will have enough experiences. As I mentioned, my grandfather used to say, experience is what you get just after you needed it. And if you persevere long enough, then you will gain wisdom. You may not become wise, but you will gain wisdom. And wisdom is the foundation of success. So if you want to be successful, you got to have some wisdom, which means you got to go through a bunch of experiences, which means you got a bunch of stuff wrong. That's how you learned afterwards what the right thing to do was. Watching my mother fight breast cancer, struggle with breast cancer for 11 years, in the way that she was determined to stay alive. And she went through some, I mean, it was like late 70s, mid to the mid 80s,
Mm.
and almost what we would think of as barbaric today, right? Like that was the treatments then. But she was just, is the right word like indomitable? Is that the right word? Like she could not be dominated. She was just, she faced everything. She'd have these big highs. I made it to 4.5 years. If I make it to 5, I'll be in remission. On the 5th year anniversary, they'd find cancer. And it happened twice. She'd have all these big things, but she wanted to be here. And I think what she passed along to me was, and so when you say, like, what was that thing that kind of kept you going? I think it was to make a little bit of a lighthearted take on it. I do not want to get to the other side and have her staring at me, wondering why I did not persist. Like,
Mm.
why did you not persist? I don't need that kind of pressure from my dead mother staring at me, asking me, like, I went through all that and you just quit. That's what
Yeah.
happened. And so that, I mean, like, it's kind of humorous, but I'm telling you, there have been days when I would think about, you think like it's all hope is gone. Like, why am I even doing this? And
Mhm.
that thought would actually flash through my mind. It's like, you're really going to get to the other side and have that conversation. That's what you're going to do. And I would think, I don't know what I'm going to do today. And I don't know how we're going to make it. But I'd rather go through today than have to have that conversation with my mother. Like, I just don't need that kind of pressure. And
Mm.
so I think that is, though, in a serious way, that's kind of what she left, was just this spirit of just persisting. And so when these things happened, like, I don't know that I knew. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have times. There was times after I was diagnosed with cancer, Angela, where I had a life insurance policy that was going to run out in a couple of years. It's like one of those term life policies. And I thought, man, if I survive like 2 years, like maybe I should just end it today. Like I'm literally worth more dead today than I will be alive in 24 months. So I didn't have the same thing, the same struggle with it my wife did or my son did. But, I think what would pull me back from those thoughts, or what helped me form these core beliefs, was my ancestors, thinking about them, you know, like just thinking about, is your situation really that bad? Are you the only one that's ever lost a child? You're really the only, no, you're not the only one that's ever lost a child. You've seen one of my aunts and uncles lost a child at 13. He was my dearest friend. He was my cousin. We were born like 30 days apart. And I saw how they handled that, and it destroyed their marriage. It destroyed everything. And I thought, that might happen, but you can't quit. Right. So I think some people didn't have my mother as an example. Well, actually, I'm the only one who had my mother as an example, but some people didn't have that kind of example.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want them to know that example is out there. That there is somebody who will tell you that as bad as it hurts today, and as much as you think you can't make it, or you just wonder, can I make it? There are examples of people who've made it. And yes, they're not more special than you. They may have just had examples of how to make it. And so you can too. And so that's what kind of got me through it, was just thinking about other people who had done it and had survived. And I wanted to be like them.
Wow. It's interesting you bring up ancestors because that was one of the things that happened to me. I was sitting and thinking about my grandmother and my aunt, and both of them had lost their husbands early on in their life as well. And I got thinking, I wonder how they did it. Because I only remember them ever, being excited to see me and happy.
Right.
It's like, I, and I
And they
never
would make
thought about it.
meals, and you would have like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So that really made an impact on me too. I thought about that. I think in just thinking about it, and spiritually, I felt very connected to them, and almost like
Hmm.
they were supporting me in my journey with the wisdom that they already had gained through their experience.
I see. I believe that. See, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like, they pass that to you. You might
Mhm.
not have even have thought about it at the time, but then when that circumstance happens, someone has passed along like that thing to you in your mind. I remember my grandmother told me, your story about your grandmother reminds me, I've never talked about this. My grandmother had 6 children. This was like back in the 1930s, right? So, and they lived out in very rural southern US, and the southern part of Alabama, really rural. They were just row crop farmers back in the 20s and 30s when my grandfather and she got married and had started having children. She ended up having 6 children, but the youngest one passed away at 6 months. And there was no hospital that you took him to. There was no doctors. She cared for it, and it died in her arms. His name was David, carried a name. The family still remembered and talked about him. But I remember her telling me one time, I don't even know why I don't know how it came up, but she was telling me, she said, Andy, everything went black and white. I was so sad. When he died, everything went black and white for me.
Mhm.
And it still makes me emotional to think about him.
Mhm.
She said, but at some point, like she didn't know what to do. I'm sure she probably thought about taking her own life. It was a difficult marriage. My grandfather was an alcoholic on top of everything else, and a very violent man. They stayed married, and later in life he partially changed, and so they survived what had happened. But she told me that she didn't know exactly when it had occurred, and she had a deep faith. And she prayed, but she said she wandered all over the place, wondering if she would actually survive the loss of that child. And then she said one morning she woke up and she saw color again.
Mm. Wow.
And that made me think it's possible to get back to a place where the world has color. Now I didn't technically, the world did not go black and white to me, but I think emotionally and spiritually it did. I think it
Mhm.
went black and white. And so I held on to that thought that if I persist, if I follow my mother's life and I persist, maybe one day the color will come back. And it did actually come back. It took a while, and sometimes it would come in and out. Like the day would pick up a little color for a little while and then it would go away. But over time, it's been almost 4 years. June 7th this year will be 4 years since we lost Heston. And technically, we didn't lose him. We know exactly where he is.
Yeah.
But so since he made his own decision, 4 years since he made his decision,
Mhm.
the days are, and like what happened to her, I don't know. One day I walked outside and I was like, the sky's blue and the trees are green and the birds are making noise, singing. I shouldn't say noise, they were singing. And I thought, we're going to make it.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think, and if somebody, one of your listeners is wondering if they will make it, will things turn, will the color come back on? I would say, yeah, it will. You just gotta persist.
I love
So I
that.
didn't mean to go there. Wow, I did. I apologize. Didn't mean
No,
to
uh, no, that's an
let that
incredible
get to me like
message.
that.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible message. And I think that really is a key. And I always tell people, like, when I started searching, I was searching for hope, hope that I would feel better. And
Yeah, yeah,
you eloquently described that with the black and white and the color. That's what I was looking for, is the color to come back again.
yes.
And there was a lot of people that told me that I would just get used to the black and white. And I didn't
Bad
want to get
advice.
used to,
That's terrible advice.
yeah,
Yeah,
I wanted to see the color again. And so,
yeah,
but had I just given up and listened to the people that said, you'll just get used to the black and white, I would have never seen the color. And so you just described that so well. And that's exactly why I'm doing this podcast, is exactly for that reason, because people need to know that if you
yeah,
persist, the color will come back. Totally can.
yeah.
Yeah.
It will. And now that we're talking about, I have thought about that, but not in the sense of sharing it. Yeah, like I say, your answer, we will pass something along. We will pass something along. Whether we have children or we not, we know people, there's still people who care about us, or we know people at work, or we're going to bump into somebody on the street. We will pass along whether we persevere or not, like in how we persevere, we will pass that along. And I think, as an example, you talked about your grandmother and I think your aunt. Is
Mhm.
that right? Your grandmother and your
Yeah.
aunt? And
Yeah.
my mother and my grandmother's story about eventually the color did come back. Those things do get you through. And I think I got to believe this happened to you because you just described one. With the best of intentions, people will give you the most god awful advice,
Yeah.
right? Like they'll just, and sometimes here's a piece of advice that I wish people who would talk to people who are grieving would take on board. If you don't know what to say, it's perfectly fine for you not to say anything.
Mhm.
Right? Like it's
Yeah.
just probably better not to say anything because things like it will get better just in the general sense. That's there's a time when you don't believe that. And when people say time heals all wounds, that's absolutely not the case.
No.
I don't think this wound will ever heal. I saw an interview with the lead singer of Led Zeppelin. He lost his child 42 years ago. And he said he and his wife still talk about it. And he got choked up talking about it. It's like 42 years. Like
Yeah.
there's some wounds that just will never heal. But or the people who say, you'll over time, you'll get past it. Like you said, you'll learn to live with it, you know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it is. I think the first thing to do is admit or come to terms with it is a real struggle. And there's going to be some dark days. I prefer the transparent advice. This is going to suck. The world's going to go black and white. But if you persist through the pain, the color will come back on. Little by little, the color will come back. And that's where a number of the 15 beliefs that I have are, that's what they were about. That's what those beliefs mean to me, is how do I get from that traumatic event, that painful event, to the place where the color comes back on,
Mhm.
where life starts taking on color again. That's, I think that's the space where those beliefs have been the most influential to me, has been in between. And I don't think a lot of people give you advice on the in between state. Like, how do I get from point A to point C? You know,
And,
or either they give you advice that is so structured and static, you're like, that doesn't really fit me.
yeah, because everybody's journey is so different, you really can't.
Yes.
Uh, but I do know that you have to face the pain, that you have to feel it. And that seems to be the only way to release it, is to feel it. And you get so that I have a curiosity now when something comes up and it triggers me in some way, just to feel something out of the realm of joyfulness.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm curious now, because I always think that when I feel that pain or whatever's coming up, there's a lesson in it for me, or there's a message in it for me, and it's an opportunity for me to learn. And you were just saying that before we came on, opportunities for growth rather than the word challenge, which I really appreciate, because I really see it that way now. Even though I can feel sadness, or I can feel anger, or I can feel jealousy, or any of those things that a lot of people don't want to feel, or we've been told we shouldn't.
Well, we don't admit to, Angela.
No,
We
no.
absolutely feel them. But what we've been told is, I think what people meant was, don't tell anybody you feel them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
Right.
they're like, don't feel them. But I felt a lot of things,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
not many of them were pleasant, honestly. You know,
No. No. And so it's interesting being through it and gone through it, and how, if a feeling comes up like that, how I can lean into it now and not be afraid that it's gonna take me out. It's just a feeling.
that
Yeah.
was one of those uncomfortable realizations. And I don't mean to make light of death and grief. And
Mm-hmm.
don't take this that way, but it's a realization that I came to, and it was. And I now tell people from time to time about something, when, and it even happens like when somebody's really sick, and I mean, like you have a really bad flu, and it's like, yeah, you might think this is going to kill you, but I'm sorry to tell you, it won't. Like, you may be hoping that it would kill you, it's not going to.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the pain. You have to face it. And you're like, man, this is going to kill me. Well, sadly, it won't.
Yeah.
But if you, the only way out of it is through it. And you're like, the universe is not created to let you go around it or under it or over it. The way out is through it. And one of the beliefs is every challenge has a chewy nugget center made of opportunity.
Mm.
And I looked at it that way because I used to hear, well, I mean, you still do. People say every dark cloud has a silver lining. And I'm like, well, maybe, but if I come upon a dark cloud and it has a silver lining, the lining's on the outside. Why wouldn't I just take advantage of the silver lining and never go through the dark cloud? Like, that doesn't, visually, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
And so everything you face has it, and you can tell, like, so long story, but after the cancer treatment, I fell in love with, like, my taste buds changed and I ended up with dark chocolate cravings. But I used to really like Milky Ways, like the chewy nugget center.
Mm.
So that's how I threw that in there, because I was thinking of a Milky Way at the time I wrote it down. But what that represents, the phrasing of it, what it represents to me is whatever that opportunity is, and it's not the thing happens so you can have this opportunity. Like, I'm not a big believer in that.
Hmm.
My father used to quote, I can't remember the verse out of the book of Job, where he said, "The rain falls on the just and the unjust."
Hmm.
Things happen, and they happen to good and bad people. They just happen.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think I went through cancer. I don't think my son's choice to end his life was like so I could have an opportunity to grow. But I think there's a choice that you had, just like he made a choice, I have to make a choice to be in the middle of that and decide that I will not let this happen without searching for that opportunity, right? Like, what is that thing? I mean, if you're going to go through hell, at least learn how to make fire. I
Hmm.
mean, learn how to start a fire while you're there.
Right.
And so take something with you because you will pass through that thing. So take something other than just the pain along with you so that the next thing you encounter, at least you have something from that awful circumstance that can help you. And you have to go through it. My wife and I still, and I say still, like 4 years is not that long, but like, it happened the other day. Like, we were just driving and we saw a car that looked like my son's, and we both automatically went back. And you just start that process over again. And I see it as like a hamster wheel. Like,
Mm.
you get on it. And at first I thought, well, the objective is if you're going to get into this circular thing, through all these phases of grief, like you're going to go through them, the object is to get off of that wheel as fast as possible. But then I realized there was like a subcomponent to that process. You will only get off of that wheel. You will only get out of that cycle. The objective is to get out of it as quickly as you can, feeling everything through it. Otherwise, you just end up staying in the cycle, right? You
Mm.
just end up staying on the hamster wheel until you feel it. So, kind of to your point, like that, like the curiosity you have to feel it, like what's there. I think it's super important that we do feel it so that we can move through it. Like when people talk about getting stuck, I don't know, maybe one version of getting stuck is not feeling it
Mhm.
because of the fear or the resistance to the pain. The pain will actually not kill you. Actually, feeling the pain is how you will save yourself. What that is, what will save you, paradoxically. So I agree with you. I think you have to feel it.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much wisdom here. Tell people where they can find your book.
Sure. Thank you. You can find it on Amazon. That's where I posted it. So that's where you can order it. The easiest way to order it is just search for my name, Andy Campbell, and it should pop up as the top search, the first search that you come to. Or you can go to my website, askandycampbell.com. That website is today, it's primarily focused on my journey through cancer. We're going back and revising it right now to include some of these other things, my son's passing and other things. But if you know someone who has a solid tumor cancer and they'd like to see what somebody else did, I'm not a doctor. I'm not recommending, not endorsing, just,
Mhm.
all disclaimers out on the table. But it has that the site has some of my views on how I see medicine and how I see the journey and what we can do to have some input into our own outcomes. And the link to the book is on there as well. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah. No, I think it's important that people reach out, and we've just touched the iceberg on these 15 beliefs, but I think there's going to be a lot more nuggets of wisdom inside that book. So I would be running to get it. In fact, I will. And is there anything else you'd like to share that you haven't been able to say that you want to?
I think I would take the opportunity you've offered me to say, maybe repeat something that I've already said, but I really want your listeners to know, do not quit. I cannot imagine what you've been through, but I do know that you can survive long enough to find some level of happiness again. The world may be black and white for you right now, but you can get there. So, what I would leave your listeners with is do not quit, do not give up. Even if you feel like you're not making much headway, don't give up. And contrary to what you may believe right now, you will make it.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for taking the time today to talk to the listeners and to offer some hope and inspiration. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Angela. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you. I really do.
And thanks everyone for listening, and bye for now.